For as long as anyone could remember, Darren had been the invisible one in his family. He was 28 now, but that feeling had clung to him since childhood. While others were celebrated, remembered, and surrounded, he was the one overlooked. No one texted to check in. No one noticed when he didn't show up in family photos. But if someone needed a ride or a favor, Darren's name would magically come up. His mother, Seela, had a sharp tongue and an even sharper memory, but somehow she only remembered his mistakes. Never the times he helped, the awards he brought home, or the birthday cards he bought with his meager allowance. His sister Isha had mastered the art of perfection early on. She smiled, got good grades, curtsied through family gatherings, and in return she was adored. Darren, on the other hand, was too blunt, too quiet, and too skeptical for a family that valued polite lies over uncomfortable truths. He tried to earn his place. Oh, how he tried. Darren showed up to birthday parties uninvited, pie in hand. He handed gifts to cousins who barely acknowledged him. He smiled and complimented relatives who always mispronounced his name. For years he thought that if he just played along long enough, he'd be accepted. But by the time he turned 25, he stopped pretending. The curtain had been pulled back. No matter how many jokes he laughed at or dinners he contributed to, he was never going to be one of them. That truth hurt, but it was liberating. Still, some wounds ache even after you've made peace with them. So, when his cousin Mila texted him the night before Thanksgiving saying, "You better come. I saved your spot," Darren found himself reconsidering. Mila was the one person who treated him like he mattered. Maybe it would be worth showing up just for her. The drive to his uncle's house took 40 minutes. He'd done it so many times before. The house was textbook suburbia, with trimmed hedges, a blow-up turkey on the lawn, and the smell of butter and burnt expectations wafting out the kitchen windows. As usual, Darren parked 3 houses away. The driveway was always full when he came. He walked up the steps with a bottle of wine in his hand, one he knew nobody would touch, and caught a glimpse through the front window. His mother, his sister, his uncle Varel, and his aunt, laughing like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't excluded him from years of family joy. He wasn't expecting applause. Not even a hug. But what happened when he reached the door made his heart go cold. As he reached for the doorknob, it opened slightly from the inside. There stood Uncle Varel, broad-shouldered and smug, blocking the entrance like a bouncer at a club. "You're not family anymore, Darren," he said. No hello. No smile. Just that. Darren let out a confused laugh, waiting for the punchline. But Varel didn't move. Through the crack, Darren saw his mother handing a plate with his name tag on it to Isha's boyfriend, a man Darren had only met once. They toasted. Darren's seat, his name, had been reassigned. "I'm serious," Varel added. "You showing up just causes tension." Darren blinked. "Tension? I haven't even stepped inside." Varel gave a fake sympathetic shrug. "Let's not make this worse. Just go home." Darren looked past his uncle and locked eyes with Seela. She didn't flinch. Didn't object. She just sipped her wine like she was watching a mildly entertaining scene. For a moment, Darren considered yelling, demanding to be let in, making a scene. But he didn't. He did something that surprised even himself. He nodded. Calmly. "Step back." Bottle of wine still in hand, he walked down the steps and back to his car. He didn't cry. Didn't curse. He drove 2 blocks, then pulled over. His hands trembled, not from anger, but from something colder, realization. He'd finally seen the truth for what it was. He wasn't family to them. Not truly. He was a placeholder. A convenience. And that seat he'd lost wasn't just a chair. It was every moment they never gave him. But Darren hadn't come unprepared. Weeks before, he and Mila had spoken in hushed tones, late-night calls, quiet exchanges about the cracks in their so-called family. "One spark," she once told him, "that's all it would take to burn the illusion down." Darren had taken those words seriously. So as he sat in his parked car, heart still racing, he opened his phone. A saved message sat in his drafts, a message he had spent weeks composing. No rants. No guilt trips. Just the truth, laid out, time-stamped, and unfiltered. He hovered for only a second before hitting send. The message went out to a specific list. 7 people in that house. He didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes after pressing send, Darren watched in his rearview mirror as Mila stormed out of the house, her face flushed with fury. She was followed by Cousin Duran, his girlfriend, and then Aunt Lisey's best friend, the one who always brought dessert and called Darren sweetheart. One by one they walked out, angry, shaking their heads. Darren couldn't hear the shouting inside, but he could imagine. The illusion was cracking. And he had lit the match. Then his phone buzzed. Mila was calling. Darren, she snapped before he could say a word. What did you just do? You read it, he replied calmly. Of course I read it, she fired back. So did everyone else. Uncle Varel turned purple. Your mom acted clueless. And Isha just stood there like she'd seen a ghost. Darren didn't interrupt. He could hear the wind on her end. She was walking fast, maybe pacing. Then her voice dropped. Why didn't you tell me you were recording them? That was the part Darren had kept quiet. For months he'd been collecting receipts. Not to hurt anyone, but to protect himself. Years of being gaslit and scapegoated had pushed him to finally gather the truth. Darren explained. He had saved voice memos, screenshots, and even video clips. One where Sela told Isha to take credit for something Darren had done. Another of Varel scoffing. He only shows up for handouts, despite Darren never asking for anything. But the worst of them? A recording from last year's birthday dinner, when no one acknowledged Darren's presence, even though he sat right there at the table. He compiled it all into a 5-minute video, a greatest hits reel of every insult, every lie, every moment of silence that screamed louder than words. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to drag you into the middle, Darren said softly. Mila sighed. I'm already in the middle. But you did the right thing. For the first time that day, Darren's shoulders loosened. You okay? I will be, she said. I'm done with them. And then the line went dead. Darren sat still, watching more cars pull away from the house. Some people lingered on the porch, confused. From inside, Sela's voice rose, shouting words Darren couldn't make out, but he'd heard versions of them his whole life. Blame disguised as concern. Manipulation wrapped in whine and laughter. But this time, Darren wasn't playing along. The next call came from Aunt Lisi. Her voice was breathless, her words quick. Darren, where are you? He considered lying but settled on, just down the street. Stay there. I'm coming. 5 minutes later, she slid into the passenger seat of his car. Her eyes were wide, not with rage but disbelief. I listened to everything, she said quietly. Darren said nothing. He let her speak. I didn't know it was that bad. I knew they could be cruel, but I didn't realize how deliberate it all was. He turned to look at her. You really didn't know? Lisi winced. I saw pieces. But your mom always made it sound like you were the problem. Dramatic. Bitter. She didn't lie, Darren said softly. She edited. Aunt Lisi stared at the dashboard, her voice shaky. This is going to rip the family apart. Maybe it already was, Darren replied. Later that night, Darren returned home to a flood of messages. Some were furious, others confused, and a few were oddly supportive. But the silence from Sela, Isha, and Varel said the most. Not one of them reached out. Not even a single emoji. But the next morning, Sela posted a long, vague Facebook status. A tale of betrayal, pain, and airing private matters in public. She never mentioned Darren's name, but the comments made it obvious. You raised him better than that, one woman wrote. Such a shame, said another. But then something shifted. Mila commented on the post first, her message simple but sharp. So did Duran. Then Aunt Lisi chimed in. Soon others followed, calling out the lies, the favoritism, and the manipulation. People shared their own stories of mistreatment and fake smiles at family dinners. The thread blew up. Some relatives deleted their comments. A few blocked Darren. But others reached out. A message came from Isha's boyfriend. I didn't know they were like that. I'm sorry. If I'd known what I was taking part in, I never would have sat in your seat. Darren didn't reply. He didn't need to. The message had already been sent. For the first time in years, Darren didn't feel like a ghost. He felt like the author of his story. And that story wasn't done yet. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, he heard a knock at his door. His apartment sat above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon in the mornings. A peaceful life far from the chaos he grew up in. He wasn't expecting anyone. Most friends had already texted after seeing the video. Mila had been checking in daily. But when he opened the door, he froze. It was his father. They hadn't spoken in almost a year. The man looked older, more gray in his beard, same worn leather jacket. He didn't smile. He didn't even say much. Hi, he muttered. Didn't expect to see you. Darren stepped aside without a word, not exactly inviting but not shutting him out either. His father looked around the apartment. The records, the books, a photo of Darren and Mila eating burgers on a Thanksgiving they had ditched the family circus. I saw the video, his father said. Your aunt sent it. Darren leaned against the counter, arms folded. Your mom's losing it, the man added. She says you twisted everything. Set her up. Darren didn't flinch. Did I? His father rubbed the bridge of his nose. I don't know. I knew things were bad between you two, but hearing it like that, it was hard. Darren's voice was steady. Hard for who? For me, his father admitted. Because I realized, I let it happen for years. Those words hit harder than any apology. For the first time, Darren's father didn't deflect. He didn't excuse. He acknowledged. I didn't say anything, Darren replied, his voice calm but guarded. I didn't trust myself to. His father shifted on the couch, looking smaller than Darren remembered. Do you remember when your mom threw away your art portfolio when you were 13? Darren nodded slowly. That memory was etched in him. He had worked on those drawings for months, and they were gone in one afternoon because he got a B in science. She told me you drew something disrespectful, his father said. I drew a cartoon of her yelling at me, Darren replied. His father let out a dry, bitter laugh. I believed her. I didn't even ask to see it. That's always been the pattern, Darren said. She speaks. You nod. Isha plays along. And I'm left wondering if I'm insane or just invisible. His father didn't argue. He just sat there, nodding slightly, letting the silence grow dense between them. Finally he spoke. I can't fix what's already happened. But I want you to know, I see it now. I wish I'd stepped in sooner. Darren believed he meant it. But that didn't erase the years of silence, the quiet compliance, the moments when he could have intervened and chose not to. I appreciate you saying that, Darren said honestly. But I don't know what you want from me. I don't know either, his father admitted. I guess I wanted to see how you're doing. I'm doing better, Darren replied. Now that I've stopped pretending they'll change. His father nodded again. They're planning damage control. Of course they are, Darren muttered. They think people will move on. And will they? Darren asked. Some already have, his father said tiredly. Some are scared to pick sides. But a few, they're furious. Especially about the money. That was something Darren hadn't shared in the group message. The money trail. For years he had helped people in that family quietly. Rent, groceries, repairs. A small loan to Isha when she claimed her boyfriend was dangerous and she needed to escape. He had never asked for repayment. He never told anyone. He just did it, hoping it might finally buy him a place in their hearts. That all ended 3 months ago. He didn't announce it. He didn't throw a tantrum. He just started redirecting his resources. To Mila. To friends. To people who saw him. The video he had sent ended with a quiet note. This is why I stopped paying for your lives. Apparently that line stung more than anything else. They're saying you're punishing them, his father said. They punished themselves, Darren replied. I just stopped rewarding it. His father didn't respond. After a long pause he stood. I should go. He walked toward the door then turned back. If there's ever a way back for us, I hope you'll let me take it. And with that he was gone. Darren didn't cry. He didn't shout. He stood in the quiet stillness of his apartment, waiting for the next wave to come. Because he knew, Sela wasn't done. Isha didn't handle public shame well. Thanksgiving may have lit the fire, but Christmas was on the horizon. And if they thought the silence would erase what he started, they were about to be reminded, Darren had only just begun. December arrived like a cold breath. And with it came silence. The family group chat, once buzzing with potluck lists and recycled memes, was dead. The last message had been from Mila. Let me know when you're ready to take accountability. No one replied. No emojis. No petty quips. Just stillness pretending to be peace. Darren wasn't invited to Christmas. Not that he needed the invitation. For the first time in his life he didn't feel left out. He felt free. No forced smiles. No watching Isha's latest promotion praised like a presidential award while his own career went unmentioned. No laughter at his expense. No Varel making jabs like, Darren's always been sensitive, as if he were a glitch in their picture-perfect family software. This time Darren didn't have to sit through it. He was free. But Darren wasn't finished. The 5-minute video he sent on Thanksgiving had shattered the illusion, yes, but he knew their type. They'd hide, wait for things to cool, and then resume as if nothing had happened. No apology. No accountability. Just silence and scheming. So he made sure they couldn't ignore the fallout. He started with the money. Quietly. Methodically. Without warning. The $3,000 loan to Isha? He had it formally reclassified. A letter from his lawyer was delivered to her doorstep, reminding her that the loan had originally been offered under false pretenses. Her story about an abusive partner? A lie. That same man had shown up at Thanksgiving, sitting in Darren's place, laughing with Seela. The letter gave her 60 days to repay. No threats. No interest. Just legal clarity. A paper trail. A boundary. Then came Uncle Varel. He had never directly asked Darren for help. His pride wouldn't allow it. But 3 years ago, over drinks and mumbled complaints about tight times, Darren had picked up on the cues. Every November since, he had sent the amount needed to cover Varel's property tax. Not this time. On December 3rd, the payment failed. Varel's bank declined the request. The final and biggest blow was to Seela. For 5 years, Darren had quietly covered the lease on her car. She never thanked him. Not once. She treated it as his duty, as if she were entitled to it. She never even realized the lease was still in his name. On December 10th, he made the call. The car was repossessed. The fallout was immediate. Ava called first, angry, frantic, voice trembling with entitlement. Then Varel called, trying to play the reasonable elder, telling Darren to be mature and talk things out like a man. Finally, Seela called. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply asked, "So, this is who you really are now?" Darren answered without hesitation. "No. This is who you made me become." And then he hung up. Christmas Eve came. But Darren wasn't alone. He spent the night with Mila and a few of their friends. They cooked together in her apartment, laughed, played games, and exchanged gifts without expectation or performance. It was the warmest holiday he'd had in years. As midnight approached, Mila poured them each a glass of wine and sat beside Darren on the floor, a blanket covering their legs. "They called me," she said quietly. "Let me guess," Darren replied. "Damage control." She nodded. "Your mom says I'm choosing sides. That I'm tearing the family apart." "You are," Darren said, a small smirk on his lips. "The part that needed to be torn down." Mila leaned her head on his shoulder. She also said something else. That she was going to set the record straight. Darren sighed. Of course she is. He knew exactly what was coming. Another public performance. Another carefully curated Facebook post designed to twist the truth and paint herself as the wounded matriarch. And sure enough, the next morning there it was. A long post from Seela, elegantly worded, vague enough to avoid specifics, but sharp enough to assign blame. She talked about how families go through hard times. How private pain should remain private. How people are easily swayed by false narratives. It was a masterclass in polished denial. No names. No mention of Darren. But everyone knew. Darren didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because something had changed. Aunt Lisi posted her own status. Short, direct, and powerful. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken family is to stop pretending it's not broken. Proud of you, Darren. Then Cousin Duran posted a screenshot of a text message from Seela, sent after Darren had helped him pay for college books. The message trashed Darren. His caption was simple. We all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it. The ripple effect was undeniable. More people started speaking up. Distant cousins, old family friends, even one of Isha's college roommates. Some messaged Darren privately. Others left public comments. I noticed things, but I never knew it went that deep. I thought it was just you being distant. Now I understand. It was like a lid had been lifted from a boiling pot. Everyone had stories. Everyone had wounds. And now no one was afraid to speak. Darren hadn't just exposed his family's hypocrisy, he had unlocked something inside people who had been quietly suffering too. For the first time, people weren't pretending anymore. They were choosing truth over tradition. And silence, weaponized for years, was finally losing its grip. A week after Christmas, a letter arrived at Darren's doorstep. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Seela. Not an apology. Not even close. It was a warning. She accused him of destroying the family's reputation. Of airing dirty laundry for sympathy. Of making enemies he couldn't afford. She ended the letter with a threat cloaked in concern. There are consequences for humiliating people in public. Darren read the letter once, folded it calmly, and dropped it in the trash. He wasn't afraid anymore. He didn't need to fight her. The truth was doing the heavy lifting. And it was winning. By New Year's Eve, the family was officially divided. Two camps had formed. There were those clinging to the old narrative, who defended Seela, insisted the recordings were taken out of context, and labeled Darren dramatic. And then there were the ones who opened their eyes. People who finally saw the pattern and chose to break free from it. Mila hosted a brunch in January for the second group. She invited people she trusted. Over 20 showed up. They laughed, told stories, passed around cinnamon rolls, and for once nobody walked on eggshells. Varel didn't show. Isha didn't either. And Sila? She wasn't even mentioned. In the days that followed, Darren found himself grieving, not just the family he had left, but the version of himself that used to beg for their love. That version, the boy who tried too hard, who stayed quiet to keep peace, who carried the weight of unspoken blame, was gone. Darren had buried him. With the guilt. With the self-doubt. With the ache that used to fill him at every silent dinner. Now Darren was alive. He began to write again, something he hadn't done since high school. He started a freelance business, small but growing. And most importantly, he grew closer to Mila than ever before. They had become a different kind of family. Chosen. Not inherited. Every now and then, Darren got messages from strangers. People who had seen the post. Heard the story. Watched it unfold through mutual connections. "I felt this way for years," one said. "Thank you for saying something. If you survived it, maybe I can too." Darren read every message. Sometimes he replied. Sometimes he just let the words sit there and wash over him. He wasn't looking for praise. He wasn't looking to be a hero. He had simply told the truth. And in doing so, he gave others permission to tell theirs. To stop shrinking. To stop begging. To finally walk away from the doors that had been slammed in their faces. If you're reading this, Darren imagined himself saying, and you're thinking about the people in your life who use your kindness like currency, who mock your boundaries, who call you dramatic for speaking up, this is for you. He thought of all the times he stayed silent just to keep the peace, a peace that was never really his to begin with. "You don't owe anyone your silence," he would say. "Not your mother. Not your siblings. Not even the ones who say, family is everything while watching you wither." He'd learned that sometimes, love had to start where blood ended. That truth is never betrayal. And that peace doesn't come from pretending. It comes from choosing yourself. He used to think that walking away from family made you a bad person. That the silence after shutting the door would be unbearable. But Darren discovered something unexpected. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Full of possibility. He didn't feel lost. He felt clear. No more waiting to be seen. No more shrinking to fit a space that never wanted him whole. In that silence, he heard his own voice again, no longer trembling, no longer edited. He was writing his life now on his terms. And the story? It was just getting started. There were still flare-ups. Sila tried a few more posts, half-truths masked as wisdom, comments disabled. Isha quietly blocked people who defended Darren. Varel stayed silent, but Darren heard through others that he was looking into legal options to get his tax situation fixed. But none of it touched Darren anymore. He had armor now. Not made of revenge or rage, but clarity. He knew who he was. He knew what he had survived. And more importantly, he knew what he would never tolerate again. Not from them. Not from anyone. One rainy afternoon in February, Darren got a letter. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed. Plain. Simple. From a cousin he hadn't spoken to in 10 years. "I saw what happened. And I've been thinking about you a lot. You probably don't remember, but when I was little, you helped me fix my science fair poster. You stayed up late with me even though no one asked you to. I've never forgotten that." Darren sat quietly after reading it, fingers resting on the edge of the page. Sometimes healing didn't come from apologies. Sometimes, it came from being remembered for something good. Something kind. Something true. That evening he walked to the bakery below his apartment. The scent of cinnamon and fresh bread met him at the door. He bought 2 rolls, one for himself and one for Mila, who would be visiting later. He didn't need to say anything to the cashier. Just a smile. A quiet nod. The world no longer felt like a stage where he had to perform. It felt real. And as he stepped back out into the soft drizzle, hands warm from the paper bag, Darren knew one thing for certain. He hadn't lost a family. He had shed one. And in the stillness that followed, he had finally found himself. The days that followed were quiet in the best way. No urgent calls. No guilt-laced invitations. No demands disguised as affection. Darren started sleeping better. He smiled more without realizing it. He played his old records again. There was no need to keep proving his worth to people who had already decided not to see it. He gave that energy to those who saw him clearly, people like Mila, friends from his writing circle, clients who respected his work. Slowly, a new life began to take shape. It wasn't loud or grand, but it was honest. And that honesty gave him peace. One morning, while reading emails, he found a new message. It was from someone named Remy, a distant relative on Sila's side. "I know we don't talk," It read, "But I watched everything unfold. I used to think you were the problem. I see now how wrong I was. Thank you for doing what I never could." Darren read the message twice. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Just knowing the truth was reaching others, that it was making cracks in the armor of generations of manipulation, was enough. Some people would never change. But others, like Remy, were finally beginning to see the light. Valentine's Day came and went. Darren spent it with Mila and a few friends playing trivia games and eating chocolate straight from the wrapper. No expectations, no performance. Just real laughter. Real warmth. Later that night, Mila looked at him and said, "You're lighter now. Not just in the way you act, but in your eyes." Darren chuckled, "Maybe because I finally stopped carrying their weight." She smiled, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "That's the kind of healing no one can steal from you." And she was right. They had taken enough already. Darren had no more to give to people who never gave back. Spring crept in quietly. The air softened. Flowers bloomed outside the bakery. Darren began writing a memoir, not for revenge, not to reopen wounds, but to tell the story others were too scared to speak. Not just his story, but the story of anyone who ever sat in silence, waiting to be seen. He didn't know if it would ever be published. That didn't matter. Writing it was enough. Each word was a seed planted in reclaimed soil. A way to say, "I was here. I mattered. And I won't disappear just because they looked away." And so Darren lived, not loudly, not for validation, but fully. He stopped knocking on locked doors. He stopped editing himself to fit in rooms that shrunk him. He walked forward, not with bitterness but with clarity. Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying to fix what's broken. It's walking away to build something whole. Darren didn't lose a family. He released one. And in that release he made space for truth, for peace, for himself. Not the version they tolerated, but the version he had always been. Unapologetic. Free. Every story carries a lesson. If this one moved you, tap subscribe so you never miss the next twist in the journey.